Hey everyone, it's Val and I'm here with Moxie, my little art assistant. First off, a disclaimer right straight away. Moxie loves to bark. If she hears a truck or something going on outside, hopefully she'll be quiet, but in case you start hearing crazy barking sounds, I'll try to move away from her because she just likes to bark. So I wanted to do a video kind of talking about reference layers for one, flats two, and then cel shading. So let's get into it. So this is one of my husband's mini D&D characters. His name is Barry. This is my finished little picture of him. It's just basically kind of almost like an avatar portrait to use for D&D things, but whatever, that doesn't matter. This is the final version I did. You can see I have some highlights and shading. He's got sparkly eyes, but we're gonna look at it in this form. So I have the flats and the inks. I've got a little background, kind of simple background with lots of textures to it, and you'll notice here that I've done my inks on a vector layer. So they look exactly the same as they would on a normal layer, but since they're done with vector, that just means in case, if you've seen any of my other things talking about vector layers before, it's really easy to erase parts. Just makes it super fast and easy to make changes and things like that. So I love vector layers and they work awesome for things like this. So let's talk about reference layers. So reference layers, to make something a reference layer, you're going to click here on the layer window. You can see it looks like a little lighthouse. It says set as reference layer. That means everything we're going to do is going to be referencing this layer. If I click off that layer and look at my inks layer, you're going to see there's a little lighthouse on that layer. It's hard to see when it's active, but that's how you'll know which layer is the reference layer. And you really can only have one reference layer at a time. So if I moved to my inks to make that one, I click the little lighthouse, it's going to make it go away on the other one. So if I go back to here, click lighthouse, you're going to see it goes away from the flats and now it's on the inks. So why might you want to make your inks a reference layer for flats? Well, that is a great question. Why would that help you? So a lot of times when I do flats, I have just like a white, plain, solid background. And then that way I don't really need to worry about making things a reference layer because when I do my refer other layers paint bucket, it's only looking at what's other layers are active on the screen. And since it's a solid color, let me just pick any color here. I've got a new flats here. Let me label my layers. I've got my original flats safe and sound, but here's a new one. If I color this in, it's pretty easy to do. No issues. So let's undo that. And now let's turn our background on. So now let's say I've got a background that has it's not a solid color. And then I try to do the same thing, same paint bucket, try to fill it in. You're gonna see it's not gonna work because it's looking at every layer and this layer is just full of texture and stuff like that. So that's where using the reference layer comes in handy. So let's just delete all of that. And what we can do is we can change our settings on our refer other layers. So instead of referring all layers, we're only going to refer to the reference layer. So now it's no longer going to look at every layer. It's only looking at our lighthouse one, which is our inks. So now if we do the same thing, color it in, now we've got it. Even with a little kind of gritty background, doesn't matter. It's going to just only be looking at our nice clean inks and voila. And even if my inks weren't bitmappy, which they are here, but if I had fill up to vector path turned on, it's gonna fill it up nice even if it is a more soft edge brush. So let me just do a little sample here. So if I do a soft edge one, I'll do really soft, and I draw a circle, you'll see it's not bitmappy, but if I go to color it in, it will still be really good at doing nice clean flats. Because flats are all about making nice selections. So that's just another reason why vector layers are the bomb.com. Okay, so now let's use reference layers for shading. So we'll kill those new flats. We'll go back to our old flats And let's make a new layer called shading. So unlike doing our flats, where we refer to our inks, for our shading we want to refer to our flats. So we're going to select our flats, we're going to make that one the reference layer. That way when we select things, it's going to look at that. For our shading layer, let's make this a clip to layer below. So in case you're not sure what clip to layer below means, I'll show you a quick sample. Let's grab a nice big obnoxious color with a big old brush. If I were to start coloring on the shading layer now, I'll just kind of, you're going to see how it only colors in the areas where the flats are underneath it. If I were to turn the clipping off, you're going to see that's what I've actually drawn. But since we're clipping to the layer below, it kind of masks everything that's not on that layer. And we can do multiple layers with multiple looking to layer below. Let me use another equally obnoxious color here. So another layer, and it's still looking at this layer because that's the first layer that's not a clipping layer. So we can stack. So when I'm doing comics or anything, any art piece, I'll have clipping layers stacked forever because I'm always going to be looking at my flats for the most part. So that's a nice pro tip there. Definitely do that. That's going to make your life a lot easier. Okay, so for shading, typically, since we're going to be talking about cel shading, words are hard, say that 5 times fast, cel shading in particular right now, we're going to want a semi-hard brush. So I'm going to break my own rules later. So we're going to want to stay away from the soft edges. We want the harder edges, kind of like if we're watching a cartoon show, because that's cel shading. So we're going to want a pretty hard edge. We're going to change this layer type. Instead of normal, I recommend doing multiply or linear burn. And let's just do, let's say I'm going to color under his nose here, add some shading here. I have a purple color selected. You can do any gosh darn color you want. I recommend staying on cooler colors or gray, or you know what, actually I don't, because sometimes for skin I like to use a more reddish orangey color. So yeah, whatever, you do it, do what you want. In this example, I'm going to use a kind of purple color here, and I'm just going to color maybe under his nose. I'm not gonna be too perfectionistic right now since this is an example. And maybe let's do his ear here. Let's do his ear all in shading. Okay. All right, so we've got our first shading in here, and you might be thinking, that's really dark, and I would probably agree with you. That's just that's a little bit too dark. So what you're going to do is you're going to turn your layer opacity down so it's a little bit lighter. Let's say I don't like purple. I wish it was something different. I have a real quick way to change your colors. Instead of going back with a new color and trying again and trying to make it look right, what you're going to do is you're going to go to edit. You're going to convert to drawing color. That's going to change everything on this layer to a new color. And you can just keep experimenting until you've got something that you're happy with. So let's say, okay, I like that. Easy, done. And I'll show you a trick later for quickly changing other bits as well. So, all right, let's just add in a little bit more shading here before we get too far. All right, let's say since we've been coloring in areas, let's say I want to color in his hairline, but I don't want to color in his hair, because if I wanted to color in some shading under here, either I just kind of have to be a little bit sloppy with it, or I've got to really be careful. But this is where our reference layers come into play. So since our flats are a reference layer, I'm going to select this tool. So what this tool is I call it Special Wand. That's what I've named it. This is not Eclipse Studio default. It's kind of closer to refer all layers. So I basically just took a magic wand, I duplicated it, I made my own one, and these are the settings I have in the tool property for it. Kind of like our paint bucket before, instead of looking at all layers or anything like that, we're only going to be looking at the reference layer. This means from any layer that I'm on, if I make a selection, you're going to see I'm selecting the different colors from this layer. So I don't have to go playing like layer back and forth, because if I do this to like make selections, like I'm going to select something on the flats, and then I'm going to go back to my shading, and then I got to select a different color on the flats, and then I got to go back to my shading. That leaves room for error. So now I can just sit on my shading layer, not have to worry about messing up my flats, because that's always very sad. And now I can just use my my special wand to make selections. So let me select his skin. I'll grab a nice big brush, and now I can do shading under his hairline or under his mustache or something like that, and I don't have to worry about coloring it in an area I don't want to. I can also use this with airbrushes as well. And if you want, I go too overboard with airbrushes. I cannot. I have no restraint. So let's say you don't want to see these ugly dotted lines. I have a shortcut here that will basically show and hide the border. So even right now, it looks like nothing is there. But if I were to draw, you're gonna see it still exists. So that's just a shortcut I have. I believe you can find that under the view somewhere. So make whatever shortcuts whatever things you use. I highly recommend making this quick access little section here. As you can see, I've got different sets for different things. My flat set is pretty much like my comic art set. So yeah, definitely helpful to do something like that. So yeah, now I can color in different areas. Let's maybe color in some of his, let's do his eyes. Maybe for his eyes, I want to do an airbrush. So let's go here and maybe grab a little bit smaller of a brush, and I want to add a little bit of shading here. Special wand, back to airbrush. And that way, it's really nice and clean. I don't have to worry about coloring in areas I don't want to. Let's color in under here, under his head. All right, and then because we kind of colored over here, let's color his little strap a little bit. All right, pretty good. I'm not going to shade everything crazy bonkers, but you've got a good idea. All right, let's say you don't just want this pink color for everything. Maybe you want to switch up some colors. Let's say like his eyes in particular. His eyes, maybe I want it to be more of a blue color for his shading in there. So this is what I would do. I would grab the color I want. For the shading layer, this layer, I would lock transparent pixels. I would grab my special wand, select the area I want, and then fill it in. So you can kind of see how that changed. If I go back, if I just fill it in, I can change it to whatever color I want, and I can just mess around with it until I get something I like. And let's do it here as well. And that way you can kind of do everything once and then easily change colors. You can even do something like this where you can make it transition from one color to another. So let's say it goes from like a purple color to like a blue color. There you go. So if I turn this all the way on normal, yep, you can kind of see the different colors I chose to use. It's hard to see. I don't know what I'm just clicking everything. You can see the actual colors I used. So yeah, use this lock transparent pixels to your advantage to kind of add little details to make your cel shading nice and fun. Okay. All right, I want to show you another trick. So let's say you want to do this character mostly in shadow, or maybe there's like a backlight. And so instead of shading little details here and there, let's do a new shading layer. And we're going to clip to layer below. And let's just fill in. So we're still looking at our flats. So from this layer, we'll call this shading 2. Shading again. Here we go. Let's fill in this layer. So now he's completely purple. Same thing, let's change this to like a multiplier, linear burn. And now we can see the whole character is in shadow, quote unquote in shadow. So what I might do in this case, if I wanted him to be backlit, is I'd grab a brush, I'd grab the transparent color instead of a purple color, and then I would kind of draw along the edges like so, and kind of create a effect sort of, like this. Instead of coloring everything and just leaving a little bit of space, I'll just reverse engineer it and just erase the parts that look lighter. And this might save you a lot of time depending on what type of lighting you want. I also really recommend, I get too caught up in the details, so sometimes it might be good to go in with a large brush and kind of block out the areas that the light is hitting or the shadows are hitting, and then you can always go in and refine it, that helps me visualize. I have a very hard time visualizing how light and shadows work on, like, making it like a 3D object. Like, my brain can't do it without reference. So I recommend maybe blocking out large areas and then kind of refining it down to just how you want it. So let me undo all that. I went a little too bonkers there. So, and in this case, maybe I want to grab like an airbrush and do the transparent color and just kind of add a little bit of lightness. I'm kind of lightening up some of the areas around so that I still have a kind of cel shading look, but I've kind of softened it a little bit because I have no self-control. And same thing, maybe for the eyes, I want to add a little bit of softness. I like to add a little bit of something to the eyes. Maybe I kind of erase a little bit there, erase a little bit here. So, and you're welcome to copy any settings I have. If you need to like pause it and like look at the settings and copy it, go for that. Let's see. One last thing I wanted to talk about was also changing the color of the line art. So let's say his eyes. Let's add I'll call this white. I like to add a little bit of shine to the eyes. Let's grab a white. Let's grab a little brush here. So for the eyes, like, to me, like I drew the eyes like this because I knew I was going to color it. So let's say I want his eyes to be blue. I want it to look more like closer to this version. What we're going to do is we're going to make sure our inks are selected. We're going to make a new layer above it and clip to layer below. I'll call this inks color. And from here I can select a blue color and then just kind of draw or paint over it. I might recommend eyedropping the colors that you want. So let me eyedrop this, maybe slightly darker. I can turn the shading back on. And now if I do it, hopefully it matches a little bit close. Nope, it's not even close. I guess I should have eyedropped the shaded color. That would have probably been the better thing to do. Okay, let's try again. Okay, now we got the same color. I don't know what I was thinking. Here we go. And so that is kind of a more natural look. So yeah, you can clip, and if I were to, here, let me finish doing this. Let me just do before I get distracted. If I were to hide this clipping layer, now you're gonna see this is what I actually colored, but when I clipped it, it just sticks right to my line art, so I don't have to worry about goofing at my line art at all. And I'll do this for lots of little areas that maybe leave the areas that I want the most focus on and the most detail as black, and maybe the smaller details I will change the color of the line art to be something a little more subtle, like so. And that just kind of adds a little something. I feel like that just adds a little something to it, you know, without too much extra work. I like to keep my brush sizes here handy in case, like, because it's going to be hard to use a paint bucket with the soft edge, to keep this handy for larger areas. So you don't have to be meticulously like doing exactly. It really depends on the area you're coloring in, because sometimes you might have to be tedious and other times you don't. So definitely have your brush sizes handy, because you're probably going to be changing that up a lot. For instance, if I was going to draw blush, I'm not going to want to draw blush with like a huge brush. Actually, that didn't look too bad. With a huge brush, I'm probably going to want a smaller brush to have more control. So I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover. Clearly, it's not as done as the finished art I did. Even now, I kind of look at it and I really went bonkers bananas on his eye glow. Look at all the sparkles in there, just for fun, just because he's so cute. So hopefully this helps you. Basically, the key is you want to create something that doesn't take you a long time. You don't want to be spending a lot of time kind of going back and forth between tools and layers and things like that. The more you kind of go back and forth between layers, the more kind of opportunity you have to goof up your flats or something like that, and then it's going to take you more time. So hopefully these tips help you just work faster in general. I know I talked for a long time, but once you've got it set up the first time, it's going to make your life, hopefully, fingers crossed, hopefully better. So thank you so much for watching, and I guess I'll see you in another video again soon. Okay, bye. Bye, thank you. Moxie says bye too. Bye.